It's a specialist hospital, Heart and Lung Specialist Hospital in Cambridge. So by background, I did my first degree law and history in Ghana, and came to the UK in 2001 as a student. And the original aim was to be a lawyer. But then, as I've said before, there was family resistance because my interest was in human rights law. But then coming to the UK, I wanted to go into marketing because I worked for my dad in sales and I thought I could do marketing. But then started sitting in a class, I knew that, no, that wasn't for me. So I went back, left the course, and then considered a few options. And realizing that, I also realized that not having been born in the UK, not having attended schooling in the UK up to university, it would be difficult to really get into a law. You get into a law degree, get your law degree, but it'll be difficult to get training contract and go in the areas that you want to get into. So the next option was corporate governance, company secretarial work. So that's why I've come into that, and that's what I've been doing for the past 15 years or so. Yeah. So that's the background and how I came to be a company secretary.
Okay, that's a very interesting background. Okay, so let's go a little deep into your early career days. Talk to us about how you started on your journey as a company secretary, especially the teaching stages. How did you navigate the early career days when you had to start looking for opportunities in corporate governance, and how you were able to start off and progress to the level you are now?
Yeah, so starting off, when I joined the course, the course was welcoming. They said, "Oh, you get jobs and all that," and it was like you're highly sought after. They need you, but then along the line, there were a group of us doing the course. 3 Ghanaians, Mauritian, and other Kenyan, basically the Africans in the class. We sort of gang together. Because the others wouldn't have, the other people were professionals already, some of them, most of them, and they just didn't have time for us. So we were pure students. So we sort of gang together and helped each other. And during the course, that's when somebody met with us and said, look, this role is mainly the white people, they want to do it themselves. So that was something that we thought, wow. But we were committed already. We weren't going to go back and change courses. So when I finished my course in July. The applications, there was no traction, nothing.
July of what year? What year in July?
So July in 2010, when I finished, there were no takers. And the first proper interview that I got was in October 2010, September 2010 in Peterborough, which was the northern part of England, so up north from London. And I live in London. I still live in London. The NHS. So I went there. It was good. So that was the beginning of it, as a fixed term contract to support somebody who was a company secretary, was now doing the course that I had done. But she was already doing the job, not qualified, but I was doing the job. And so that is how I started. The first role was a fixed term contract. And then I went on to do a PLC, a private sort of public limited company, which had shareholdings on the London Stock Exchange for 3 months. And that's when it went downhill. So that's another conversation if you want us to continue from there. Yeah. So do you want me to continue from there? Okay.
Let's go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, just go ahead. So yeah, so in Peterborough, the NHS role was great. 10 months of it, where it was purely supporting and cleaning up the governance handbook, which was terms of references and policies and all things to do with corporate governance. It was great. Then went to the PLC, it was in Glasgow. So I'll still live in London, but going to Glasgow 3 days, sort of 5 days during the week. I'll go and live there and then come back home. And that was, I had, at the back of my mind, I thought I had acquired a mentor because I applied for the role. And when they called me for the interview, I didn't respond. And then the assistant company secretary who was recruiting called me and said, why? And I said, I have my doubts. She said, come along. So I bought a ticket and I went to Glasgow. Very intense interview. I got the job. So I thought, wow, this is what I trained for, PLC, FTSE 100. This is what I'm going to do from here. And I got in the first week, I realized it wasn't going well because the handover notes, the lady that was doing the maternity and I was going to cover, it was like a folder and it was all in there, all the things he did, nothing. There was no structure to it, nothing. So the first month, I kept asking questions, and that is not a good look. That is not a good look if you are not if you are not liked for whatever reason. And at that time, I thought, yeah, you ask questions, so you ask questions. And so by the second month, I realized I needed to do something. So I took the folder home, rearranged it, and to make it easier for me to, when I need something, I know where to go to. But then I was getting the hang of it because it was completely different to the first rule. And the third time, the third month, I had it. I knew that I had it. And basically, it was a good time for her. And the lady was about to go on a maternity leave. And I knew I had a job. But one day, after the third month, the boss called me and said, after today, don't come back next week because people are complaining. I said, who? Said, oh, everybody, because I was the only Black person in the building. And when you go in, people will be looking at you, they'll be turning around looking at you like that. Because what are you doing here? You know. And she said, people are complaining, you don't fit, you know. And I said, you've really not shown any common sense. What common sense? That her boss's wife was also complaining. Boss's wife. She doesn't work there. She was also complaining. And I thought, but she will call her husband, and the phone, it will ring, and if he's not at his desk, it will bounce to me, and I'll say hello, and I'll take the message. I'll email the husband, say your wife called, not knowing I had to engage with her. Well, that's the etiquette. You have to engage with her, talk to her about something, the weather, the horses, something. You know, I didn't know that. I am nervous guy trying to get the hang of the job. That was my focus. I thought, you know. So she was complaining that, why have you brought this guy from London? And I don't know what they said about me, but I'm sure it wasn't good. And the woman I thought was my mentor did not stand up for me. She did not stand up for me. So I cried and I took the plane and I came back home. And it was hell from there. You know, I interviewed so the October 2010, I interviewed for the next time I got a job was in December 2011. Was it? So it was in December 2011 because no one wanted me. I was applying NHS, going for interviews at least 2 times a month. So 2 times a month for 11 months. You know,
Wow.
That was so you can do the math. It was more than over, you know. It was hell, you know. And it was like you you've done the job. You know what you've done. You can, in your CV, they ask the questions and you can talk about the office. You've done it for 10 months, 3 months here. So more than a year, you've done it. But nobody wanted me. So I did another 3-month interim, December to March 2013. And that was also difficult because the woman, company secretary, she'll tell you, Kwame, do this. You do it, and you take it to her, and she'll say, no, that's not what I said. I meant that. So you start questioning your understanding of English. You start questioning your understanding of English. And you do a set of minutes, and she'll say, no. This is not what they meant. They meant that. But you know that what she's saying to you is the exact opposite of what they said. But she is senior company secretary, and you are at the very bottom, starting out, struggling to get in. You can't challenge it. You can't challenge it. So she was like, this is what they said. But the thing is, as you're taking the minutes at the meetings, because I was supporting the board and they were also doing a merger. So I was supporting 2 boards and other committees. As you're doing it, she's also typing up there. So she wants you to write what she wants you to say to reflect a certain thing. And it was against every ethic that I know. But you do that, knowing that you cannot challenge. So that was the beginning of it. And I did 3 months of it and I left. So I came to sit at home, March 2013. The next time I got a job was again in September. That was the beginning of my permanent role from there. And since then, it's been good. So that period between September 2011 to September 2013 was like I interviewed not less than 100 times. Not less than 100 times. And
wow.
There were various, either people came back to me or one person said, we don't think you're a good fit. And others just didn't come back to me. And the others said, oh, you are, most of the time, 90% of the time, oh, between you and the person we got, it was very small. Very small, 90% of it. It was just a choice, but we had to go with the other person. And the few other times, nah, you are not a good fit. You are not a good fit. And you're like, wow, how do I get back in? So in that time, I hadn't done car wash before, Celine. I had to do car wash,
Wow.
Stand there and spray in the winter,
Wow.
Because it's like you can't do any other job because you are interviewing, and it's 2 a month. At least 2 a month. 2 a month. You can't go and do another job. You had to go and make sure that whenever, because it was a friend that was managing the car wash business. So I said to him, look, I need this just to keep going. So I'll do the car wash, and whenever I had an interview, I just drop everything and go for the interview, and then come back to the car wash. And thank God we went through that. So September 2013, I got back on stream and started climbing back up. So the Peterborough role, I went for it in terms of money and everything, to the job in Glasgow, and then they came back, sat at home. The NHS, I went for it in terms of money as well, and then I had to take a step back again to start again. I had to take a step back to start again. So 2013, I was, yes, it was it was good. Yeah. I thought it was something that I keep to myself and make sure that if I can help anybody, that they don't go through that. Yeah. So those were the tears.
The question is, in terms of the work culture, can you give us a little bit of an insight into how in the UK environment, what does the work culture look like then and now? Are there changes from your own observation? Some of the challenges you faced then, do you think there's been any progress in terms of changes in the dynamics? So just give us a little bit of insight. What kept you going, and the work culture challenges you experienced then and now? Is there some improvements? And all of that, please.
So what kept me going was faith and determination and grit. I had the faith that because because I pray a lot, I pray a lot, and I've always prayed for direction. I've always prayed for direction. So I consider the period when I did the marketing and left, and when I started that, it took me 7 years to find my way back. And I consider those years my wilderness years. But I pray a lot, and I always believe that whatever is happening to me is at the direction of God. So when I applied, before I applied, I felt a direction to apply for corporate governance, and I knew that this is where I wanted to go anyway. When I applied, it was left to school fees. So I was running a bank account, putting money in a bank account, working so that I'll go for a bank loan in one bank. I had a different bank account, but I had a cousin who was a bank manager, and said, "You run the bank account, we'll see how we can get you a loan when the time is right." But as I started doing the running bank account, one day, one of my bank accounts, another bank called me and said, "Come for a loan." And I thought, why? So I went to the bank. I didn't apply. I went to the bank. They gave me the money. It was a bank loan, just enough for the course that I was going to do. And at that time, I applied for 3 courses, and I had accepted one. And when I got the loan, I accepted one because the money was not enough for the other 2. So it was enough for the one which was the easiest to get to. So I went to pay the fees. It was as if it was it was a loan, and it was my pocket. So once I did that, I knew that this is what God wanted me to do. So when I hit that, I did it. I thought, why are you allowing that? But then, thinking back, my first job was in the NHS. But in my mind, the training was for PLC. So in my mind, I thought, what's the NHS? I want the PLC. So when I went there, of course, you get the job, but I go there and then you get thrown out. And you come back to the NHS. So basically, 2 years was for me to come to my senses to realize that I'm directing you and I know where I'm putting you. So you don't try to go and do, of course, when you work for a PLC, at the very beginning, you make more money, much more money than you work in the NHS. The NHS, until you get to the senior levels, you're not making anything. But that's the way of God. That's for me. That's how I believe it. So what kept me going was my faith and the remembering that the bank called me when I didn't apply and gave me money to pay my fees. Just enough for South Bank University, which was easy for me to get to. I was thinking of Portsmouth, which would have been difficult. And I was thinking of UCL, which the course wasn't the same. You understand? So what kept me going was my faith. And of course, you need to also have determination and a vision and a dream. But then I also know, you know my family. I also know that there is no way I could have done it if I would have had to stick to maybe find the nearest car wash or the nearest security if my family was the sort of family that you had sisters or your mother was saying my rent, you have to pay my rent now, or your sister has children and this might sound flippant, but most people out here are looking at the family back home in Nigeria, Ghana, wherever. So if you have that sort of burden, it's really difficult to pursue a career because, especially when it goes into difficulties, because you need the money to pay. People are calling. They need. So I don't have that. That is one crucial point that I always acknowledge. I don't have that. Otherwise, it would have been quite impossible over the 2 years. And of course, I didn't have children as well then. So it was that. So there was the faith, there was the determination, but there was also the relative privilege of not having the pressures of normal other Africans. So that was it. So that was what kept me going. So that is the answer to that question. For the 2 years, that was it every day. And of course, having a supportive wife who took on a second job whilst I was interviewing and struggling to get back in, because she has been very supportive in that sense as well. So in terms of the work culture, it has changed. It has changed. It has changed. These days, over the last 15 years, I see, honestly, a lot of young Nigerians, and one or two Ghanaians, but it's mostly Nigerians and other in terms of the Black. And you see them in areas, I think, wow, how did they get there? Because when you look at the background, it's all University of Nigeria Law School. I don't know. Yeah, it's a Nigerian law school. So I'm thinking either they were born here, couldn't get into a good law school, went to Nigeria law school, came back, or they came. And I think a lot of them have come from Nigeria. And one or two, you see one or two Ghanaians in places that when I started, they wouldn't even take your CV. And the thing is, I used to, as a student, I used to work at Tesco's. And what they say, oh, when you're a student, so when you finish, yeah, you apply. 3 times I applied for company secretarial assistant, and I put in there that I work at Tesco's. Nothing. But recently, I've seen a Black Ghanaian girl as the assistant company secretary. Recently, so it's changing. And so for me, I didn't get a chance, or maybe that was not for me. But I look at it with pride, and I know that for better or for worse, we've sort of laid a path. And even in the NHS, when I started, I didn't see anybody that looked like me. But gradually, the people that I started with, my mates at uni, 2 of them, and whilst I was struggling to get back in, they went ahead. So 2 of them, one is a director of governance, and she's from Zimbabwe. And there's another one who is trust secretary, company secretary, and from Mauritius. And there's another guy who wasn't my mate, but is a contemporary from Zimbabwe, who is also director of corporate affairs. And we are popping up gradually, and I'm joining them as an associate director of corporate governance. And there are a few Nigerians that are directors as well. Always I don't know, wherever you go, you see Nigerians, and I'm thinking, yeah, they are doing it. Why am I Ghanaian people? Gradually, we are popping up, and gradually we are coming through. But 15 years ago, it wasn't easy. But now we are coming through. Yeah. But the other thing is, I always say that in this country, so long as you go and you do a good job, if you are straight in with directors, some of them have never mixed with Black people. or the black people they see are cleaners and stuff. They clean the security people. So if you come across well, you speak well, you dress well, you show competence, they start to like you. They start to like you. And if the words that come out of your mouth, if you behave, the words that come out of your mouth are sensible, they take you seriously. But that part of being taken seriously, that takes a while, before they take you seriously. Yeah. But then I always say that once they give you a job, then they like you. So if you go there and behave, you'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the changes that I can describe.
Okay. At least it's comforting to hear that it's a lot better than 15 years ago, because listening to your story, it became, some people may have felt a little bit discouraged. That's why I had to ask that question, so that we are guided that it's a lot better than when you started.
It's a lot better.
So I want to go a little bit deep into your work role in the NHS. Can you share a little bit about what it entails, your role as a corporate governance professional, a little bit of insight, what are the interesting or challenging things about working in the public sector organization as the NHS? Because you've explained that your path had squarely been on the NHS organization. So can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day role? What do you really do? What does it entail working in that space in the NHS?
So anybody coming into NHS, and I explain it to people that are at the bottom. I always say that at the bottom is you are the minute taker. You are the minute taker. So you do a lot of minutes. So that's how you prove yourself that you can write. That's how you prove yourself that you can that you can write, because it becomes more strategic at the higher level. So if there's a company secretary and they take you on as company secretary assistant or assistant company secretary, you are the one going to do all the minutes. So I've done that. When I went back in 2013, all I did was minutes, committees, you go and sit there and then you minute. But it's also so I tell people, when you go into those meetings, instead of just sitting there mindlessly minuting, listen to what they are saying, read the papers. That's how you educate yourself. So when you're in the NHS, then that means that this is your area. So you get to know how the hospitals are run. You get to know how you can contribute. Listen, so you just don't go in there. So if you're in a PLC, it's usually the same things with variations. If you're in housing, the same things with variations. So even in the NHS, you go to a different hospital, like I'm going to a specialist hospital, it will be different to the hospital that I worked with. But then it's about the same things, the same themes with just variations. So the best thing is, as you're starting out, listen. You need to listen and learn. So the only trouble is, the mistake some people make is they continue with the minute taking as they progress, but then, so how I started was, I started with minutes, then I went to another hospital where it was purely minutes, because I started 2014. I went for the role that I got in 2013, 2014. I went to another role, which was the company secretary was a Nigerian, Siba Agbaibe, and she said, take over. And I was the board administrator, and that was very crucial for me. So I was managing the board, and it was where I learned everything I needed to learn as a company secretary. You understand? So you are sitting at the board for 5 years. I managed the board and everything, and I learned everything that I needed to learn. But then after 3 years of doing that, someone came in and promoted me to corporate governance manager. Because he realized I was managing the whole thing. And then that's when I started to stretch. You understand? So I went into policy management, and I went into risk management as well. And that has stood me in good stead. So from then I went to a role near where I live in Croydon, and there too I stretched a bit more and went into freedom of information management and other aspects of compliance. So that has been my job, where I've added things to my bow in terms of risk, in terms of policy management, in terms of freedom of information, in terms of IG, information governance, so that I could keep stretching whilst until recently, until I dropped the minute taking, until this current role where I dropped the minute taking altogether. I have been able to stretch and stretch and stretch to do other things. So that has been the role. I hope I've answered your question. Hello.
You definitely have. So apart from, you've explained some very interesting things, what about challenges? Haven't you encountered some challenges in the role? And how were you able to navigate those?
Challenges. So challenges in terms of?
In terms of your work role, in terms of how you do your job on a day-to-day basis, were there times when you had to learn new things and you struggled a bit, even in the role at the NHS?
You need to manage your career. So the 3 years that I worked as board administrator, I used it to learn how to run a trust secretariat or a company secretariat. And then I started to stretch. You understand? So I've managed I've not allowed somebody to come and tell me you need to do this. You need to do this. So I started to stretch and do other things. You understand? And of course, I won't go into finance, which is way outside of my comfort zone. But then give me anything else, I can do it. Legal, I can do it. HR, I can do aspects of it. You understand? Everything that I've done, I've learned at my own pace, and I've done it. And it's all about, I think basically it's all been about looking at I like to look at a problem and analyze how to resolve it, and I go about resolving it. So in terms of risk, I had a good teacher as well, because the person that promoted me to corporate governance manager, he was a risk professional, chartered risk. So I used the opportunity to learn from him. So he was doing it whilst I was watching him. You understand? And of course, I went into another role where I was managing the risk manager. And I used all that I learned to apply. So I always say you are in a role, you learn something, you go to a new role, you apply that, and you also impose your vision and the way you want to do your things. And then you make sure that you are improving all the time. You understand? You are improving all the time. And that's how I've done it. Challenge. The challenge was more in the portfolio when I was the corporate governance manager, where you are minuting so much, the board and all the board committees, and then trying to stretch. That's when I realized, if you want to stretch, if you want to do progress, you can't minute as well. Because minute taking takes a long time. So for you to be doing other things, you have to let it go. So it becomes a skill that maybe will become rusty, but you can brush off if you need, but then you can do other things that are a bit more strategic in that sense. Yeah. So that was where the challenge was, how to combine doing the minute taking and then being able to stretch as a company secretary and do other things. But then I realized I had to make a decision, and that's why I left that role and went into a role where there was very limited minute taking.